Hi, I'm Joyce. I'm a PhD student at the University of Washington, where I also work with the Harry Bridges Center for Labor Studies. I'm also the recording secretary of UAW 4121, the Union of Non-Faculty Academic Workers at UW. Thank you. I'm here today in a personal capacity to discuss how tech affects workers and just starting the conversation around what we might do about it. So a big question that a lot of people have is just, is AI really going to replace workers? And to give you an answer based on recent studies, the impact of AI on workers is uncertain. The value of AI itself isn't clear at the moment, and researchers haven't seen serious disruptions to the workforce yet. But AI is being used as an excuse to lay workers off and depress wages, and I think that's something that's clear to all of us here. I think it's also important to briefly talk about replacement versus displacement. So AI replacement sort of implies that a worker is just going to get swapped with AI, and displacement means that people are pushed out of their jobs because of technological or structural reasons, but that means that new, different jobs are usually created. But these jobs are also often lower quality and earn less, and this is what I mean by wage depression. Employers can claim that they're laying workers off because AI is increasing efficiency in the workplace and they don't need as many workers. And the people who are laid off alongside many others have to compete for fewer jobs that can pay less because so many people are competing for them. Plus, the idea that some of your job could be done by AI can be used as a justification for lower pay. Fewer jobs also tend to be created in actuality, and sometimes displacement of work kind of just means that the content of people's jobs change to be about making the machines work in context. So one example of how this can happen, and something that we've all probably encountered, is self-checkout machines. Cashier work has become more about solving problems and enforcing rules with these machines, right? Another example is that some of the new jobs that LLMs created were more data cleaning and labeling jobs, but that's also usually exported to the global south where labor is cheaper and easier to exploit. So who's impacted by AI right now? In the global north, large language models and other generative AI models affect white-collar and data-rich industries. And so, yeah, this was something that Neil previously mentioned. When we talk about AI right now, we mean large language models and other generative AI and transformer-based models. And so in these fields, it's also mostly affecting early career and entry-level workers. And these are workers who are more likely to be assigned tasks and go off and do them. And a lot of their jobs about learning how to do the job, right? And this is in corporate industries like tech, law, consulting, finance, and accounting, creative industries. A lot of writers, animators, graphic designers, illustrators are being affected by AI, and also customer service, like call center workers and translators. And generally, robotics has a long way to go and has always been a challenge for engineers. But I do hesitate to just leave it at that, because I have heard about attempts to create data sets that can help make transformer models useful for physical tasks. And how else does AI and automation affect workers? As I kind of was pointing to when I was talking about displacement, AI and automation can sort of just displace workers into worse versions of their existing jobs and can make work worse in other ways too. And I want to briefly point out that when I say AI, and when we collectively say AI, we often just mean automation. And there are a lot of things we should be wary about in our workplaces that don't even require the capabilities of LLMs or transformer models. So with surveillance and monitoring, a lot of technologies can contribute to an increase in recording and collecting information about how you're doing your job. And then they can rate or make predictions about you, which isn't only uncomfortable, but potentially biased, as was just mentioned. With increase of algorithms in our work, technology can prompt workers to make specific choices and follow specific courses of action, which is often referred to as algorithmic management. And that can also lead to de-skilling and also a general intensification of work. So workers don't get to be as creative or develop their skills and thinking in the same way if something else is always telling us what to do. A lot of work can become what some researchers call patchwork. So your work is basically just about assisting the technology, even though that's not supposed to be your actual job. So, you know, like self-checkout machines and what cashiers end up doing. And then generally, work just becomes enshittified. And so enshittification was the word of the year like last year. It was coined by Cory Doctorow and basically talks about, with online platforms specifically, how companies attract users for free and then slowly make the platforms worse in an attempt to make more money off of them. But most importantly to me, in terms of how we're affected by AI and automation, there's a threat of replacement, which I basically discussed in the wage depression example I mentioned earlier. And I think that brings up the question of, like, does it matter if AI even works at all? Talking about the threat of online surveillance in this time of increased authoritarianism, Sophia Goodfriend says that where AI falters technically, it delivers ideologically. And I really like this quote because it's really simple, but it's very apt. The threat of surveillance causes people to change their behavior and censor themselves, even if the tech isn't actually as all-knowing as, you know, the Trump administration or Palantir claims it is. I know I have, right? In a labor context, issues like de-skilling, wage depression, and surveillance come up even if AI isn't good enough to totally replace workers. And the threat of these things can affect how we do our work, even if the technology can't fully replace us. And some people say that AI should complement and not replace workers, but we can fall into these issues as well if the bosses are the ones deciding how tech should complement workers. So really, the issue with AI isn't technical, it's social, political, and economic. It's about how bosses and big tech are weaponizing these technologies to increase their bottom line and their stock prices. So what do? As a union member and organizer, my answer is always that we should start in our workplaces and talk to our coworkers, whether we have a union or not. A really great website that a couple folks have put together is workersdecide.tech, and it has a lot of things that can help facilitate these sorts of conversations. The idea of AI can be really helpful to reflect with, in my opinion. For example, asking what aspects of our work does AI affect tells us what elements of our work do we care about and find valuable. Ask who's pushing AI adoption right now in our workplace and in society more broadly. We find out who benefits from AI adoption and who doesn't. And also it tells us who we're up against and who we're fighting alongside. So one example that I want to give, and I don't have a ton of time to talk about this, but this is kind of what I'm trying to do in my own workplace. There are a lot of ways and reasons why AI is showing up in higher ed spaces. And given that we have a union, contract bargaining is definitely something we're thinking about. And Cory is going to talk more about public sector employees and bargaining over AI in particular. But even if this isn't an available path to us, AI can help illuminate what parts, or the ways that we think about AI, can help us illuminate what parts of our jobs are really important to us and what other protections to really fight for in our next contract. And even if you don't have a union, you and your coworkers can still collectively raise issues together. A representative from Amazon Employees for Climate Justice is going to talk a bit more about that too. So next I'll pass it over to Cory and then Amazon Employees for Climate Justice, who will talk about public and private sector experiences of AI.